got a quick little shop update or random update video. I had mentioned that there was a big announcement coming on the Dakota, and that kind of blew up in my face. I ordered this really nice set of XD rims. They were the Rockstar 3s in machined with matte black, super nice. You know, probably cost a couple grand Canadian normally, and I found them on this website for 180 a piece, and it was like, seemed too good to be true, and ordered them, paid for them, and a few days later I got a message saying that the rims have been discontinued and they're not offering me discounts on any other rims or anything. They just kind of said that was it. So this wasn't XD I spoke to, but partsengine.ca. So what I'm gonna do is, because it runs so good and the interior is so nice, I'm gonna paint it. That'll be my next project on here. So as you can see, it's got the miscolored bumper and the paint peeling. This was some sort of secondary paint job that happened. I'm not sure exactly what the deal was with that. I've had these fender flares off, and on both of the front ones there's some rust, so I'm gonna have to clean that up. You can tell this was in a bit of a fender bender back here, so all this is gonna be needing to get cleaned up a bit. And then I've got these dents here to fix, which actually aren't that deep. So I'll get the stud gun and the dent puller and try and clean that up as much as I can. There's a bit more back here. I'm gonna buy a roll pan for it and get rid of that back bumper. I would really like to put a different tonneau cover on, but this one just is in such good shape and works so well, it's really hard to justify the expense. And then back here, I've got some definite rust repair, and if you can see that above the fender flare, I can't even imagine what it looks like inside. So that's going to be the order of progress on this thing. I've got the transmission hunting problem and the overdrive problem fixed on the 12 valve. So it was the throttle position sensor as well as the transmission output speed sensor. I think the output speed sensor was maybe still good, but it threw a code and I put a new one in which didn't change it. But there was an open circuit between the two wires coming into it, so I ran some new wires up to the other end of the harness near the PCM, connected them, got the new throttle position sensor on, and it appears to be running normally. I had the quad out a couple times lately. And there's a few little things that I gotta horse around with that. So this thing has an aftermarket rad relocate kit. The problem with it is I can't get the cover. Right there's the fuse panel in there. And it's supposed to have a cover. This right here is supposed to live in underneath that. But you can't get it on and off with this rad relocate kit on. And after I put the new stator in this thing, it wouldn't start, and I started, you know, checking the usual suspects. It had fuel pressure, and but it didn't have spark, and the F1 fuse was blown in there. So I mean, if something like that happened again, you know, I need to have access to it on the trail, and you know, I can't just be, you know, moving all these bolts and jimmy rigging it around. So I think what I'm going to do is get a new piece of hose that runs down here. And then I'll build up some type of spacer. I might actually be able to modify this so that there's a bit of room sort of this way, kind of notch this out, and maybe this thing would slide in there. But that's something, not a huge priority, but something that's gonna need to happen. This thing's all soaking wet right now because I went and pressure washed it this morning. Still pretty gross though. Yeah, this thing needs a bit more of a solid scrub, but anyways, there's that going on. I possibly have a leak on one of my front tires. My steering seemed like it was pulling a little bit the other day. And then also when I went for a ride, I did have a bag stuffed in this when I pressure washed it this morning. But the other day when I went for a ride, one of these things fell off. So I got to go through and sort of tighten them up and just have a look at everything, as well as some general maintenance. I did just put new oil in here when I put the stator in, but the air filter in here, I had a look at it recently and it's pretty dirty, so I'll have to clean that up, and I'll probably just try and go around and you know, see what the oil looks like in the diffs. Also, I tried using the winch the other day, and it's a little bit noisy, and you know, it works fine, but sounds a little bit grumpy, so I'll see. It's probably sealed, but I'll see if there's any maintenance stuff I can do on that. But anyways, this thing's running great. Been out having a blast with it. The big truck now is back to shifting great, so I can start focusing on all the many things that need to be changed. First of all, and I'm going to do this today, I am just so sick of looking at these amp step mounting brackets. The story with this is I was halfway through installing these. Actually, let me just back up a step. So I've had a couple of things happen on this truck that were really challenging to get through. I had pulled the head off and put new head gasket on and ARP head studs, and then I put in the cam and the turbos, compound turbo kit, and had a couple days of it was really fun driving around. And then after 2 days I was driving, and simultaneously the head gasket blew and the stator support shaft in the transmission became de-welded. Let me see if I can find that. So this is the stator support shaft. It lives in the transmission. It bolts up against the oil pump, and then the input shaft, which runs from the torque converter out to the rest of the transmission, that runs inside of this. And this is supposed to be one solid fixed piece, but mine became sort of de-welded in there. I was looking around online. I can't see any other example of this happening. I'm sure it has, but I couldn't find it as definitely not being a common problem. And the transmission parts supply house where I bought the replacement from, they said they've never heard of this either. Yeah, this thing, the way it became sort of disconnected from itself, actually stuck the truck in lockup, and it caused it to just stay in lockup. So as I was coming to a stop at an intersection and it stalled, it was because it's like trying to stop a manual truck without pushing the clutch in. And then of course once I pulled out in front of a car and tried to, go, I think that was when it actually stalled. And, I tried to start the truck, and, trying to get an automatic going when it's, stuck in lockup in first gear is tough. I mean, you got to put it in neutral and rev it up to at least 1200 RPM or so, and, put her in gear quick and try and just feather it. And it was a mess. There's just clouds of smoke everywhere, and I'm cutting cars off trying to get through. I mean, it was terrible. There's just clouds of black smoke. It was pretty sketchy situation. So I pulled into my driveway, and I think I saw a little bit of steam coming out or something like that, and I looked in the on the dipstick, and it was just complete milkshake. So that was kind of the start of a couple months, actually several months of getting it back together. So I pulled the head off, and I'd done some research and stuff, and option A was going to be to just take the head and get it surfaced and O-ringed, and then put it back on and hope for the best. And the thing had a bit of blow by and stuff, and figure if I'm gonna go in there and do it, I might as well just go all the way. So I totally pulled the motor out and stripped it down to a bare block, brought the block and the head into a machine shop, and got the block decked, honed, new crank or cam bushing put in, and then I also got the head surfaced, O-ringed, and got a valve job done, and got the new rod bushings pressed in and line honed, and then I bought all new Cummins bearings for the crankshaft and for the rods, and I think new rod bolts and new and all new rings, all from Cummins. So now I'm thinking, all right, I got this thing back together. So I get the motor put together, get it back in there, start it up, and it stalls again. And so I was thinking that whole problem had been because of the head gasket blowing and there wasn't enough compression or whatever it was, and that was not the case. So the problem that I was trying to track down was the fact that the truck was just stuck in lockup, and it was an ordeal. It took me a long time to get through that. Transmission had to come off and on at least a couple times, and it was actually once the transmission was out, but the valve body in and out a few times, and you know, this system with the oversized tranny pan and the heat exchanger and the aftermarket tranny cooler I've got, there's probably 15 or 20 liters of ATF in this system. So draining it is no small thing. I mean, you pull the pan off and it's just dripping forever, and it was an ordeal. It was really quite a tough thing to get through. I actually sent my valve body back because I had a brand new custom valve body, and I sent it back to the shop that I bought it from. And they did find some shavings in there, so at that time we thought that was the problem. It was just keeping the lockup solenoid, the lockup valve, I think it was. They figured that that was maybe stuck open, and I put the new one in, and that wasn't the problem. So eventually, you know, we were then thinking that maybe the torque converter, which was brand new and rated for 1200 horsepower, we thought maybe that was the problem. So I pulled the tranny again and pulled that off, and was getting ready to send it back to the manufacturer, and he actually said that that's most likely not the problem. Check your oil pump. The shop that I bought the valve body from and all the transmission stuff, they had said that it might be oil pump, but for whatever reason, we just figured we'd rule out the valve body first. Once I had pulled the transmission apart again, or the front part of it, and found this problem in here, then realized that was the issue. So anyways, long story short, the day that I was putting on the amp steps was actually the day that I got the valve body back, and pretty much ever since then, I've been chasing down leaks and trying to get all the loose ends and stuff like that dealt with on this. And I can't believe this much time has gone by and I still have not finished hooking these up. All right, so now that we're all caught up to speed, the reason that I haven't finished hooking up the amp steps is because the electrical system on this truck, I've just gone and made these new battery cables. They're like a solder knot end, and you know, a million times better. I've actually I made a video about that if you want to check it out. There'll be a link in the description, or you can just go have a look on my page. It's one of the recent ones. But anyways, I've got just so much new electrical stuff going on this truck, and the system that's on here is already a mess. So I really I just don't want to start scabbing more stuff onto the electrical system of this truck. My dad is an automotive electrician. We live in different towns, totally different areas actually, but he has advised me that I should put in a power distribution box. So I'm gonna get like a proper Hoffman box, and I've got a bunch of really nice sort of circuit breaker. I'll show you. These, I think I have a few of them. And the idea with them is that I'm gonna put them inside a box where I can have all the wiring. It'll have its own feed, and it can just be a place to house in a proper way all the electrical stuff that's going on here. So this truck has an Air Dog lift pump. It has, it's gonna have a pack brake. I've also got a tranny cooler with a fan on it, 900 watt JL audio stereo, and it's gonna have heated seats, and it's got a backup camera, and you know, a bunch of other stuff. There's going to be the pack brake system has a pretty good size air compressor, and then there's also two other little air compressors that I got from ARB for the air lockers, and I'm going to have those hooked up to this tank up here that my dad gave me, and that will be mounted up under the frame. There's the compressors there, and then that will be used to handle the air lockers as well as any supplemental air use. I'd like to just leave the pack brake air compressor to its own system, just because it is such a safety thing. Yeah, so anyways, I don't want to just keep scabbing on electrical stuff. So long story short, I'm going to pull those mounting brackets off for the ARB steps, and until I have a proper system in place to hook up electrical components, I just don't want to keep adding to this mess. So I'm just completely sick of looking at them. They look ridiculous, and enough time's gone by. So I'm just gonna pull them off, and they'll go on when I'm, you know, good and ready to do it. This truck has a Carly Dominator 3.0 suspension system on it, which is very high end and very expensive, and it's supposed to have unbelievable off-road performance, but the problem is the truck rides like absolute garbage. So I haven't talked about this in videos because I don't want to badmouth Carly, because this is most likely my problem, not theirs. And so I'm going to go through some possible solutions to try and figure that out. When I talked to the Carly guy, he said that maybe my rear swing shackles are too tight and they're not able to swing and function properly. So I'm going to loosen those up a little bit. And then also another thing that I kind of ran into, and I'm struggling to find a straight answer on this. I'm gonna have to call Carly again today, but I think I have the rear shocks on upside down. In the instructions, it said to do the shiny side up and the body down, but I actually noticed back there that the body seems to be coming in contact with the frame, like the shock body does. So, you know, maybe those instructions were just kind of generic for the smaller shocks, but because I have the 3-inch King shocks, they're huge. And so maybe I need to put the shiny side down on those. We'll see what Carly has to say, because I think that that might have actually been limiting the travel. So gonna go ahead and find out about that. And then I haven't done anything really more with the boost leak situation. The other day the power was really low, and as it always is, I mean, I've had just horrible problems with boost leaks on this truck. And this clamp here, I just cannot get this thing to seal up. I mean, this is another clamp that I found off of my old turbo system. I just had it in a random box of turbo parts, and it was definitely smaller than the clamp that came with the kit. And I mean, I've got that thing tightened to the max. I mean, like, look at that. It will not tighten anymore, and it's still leaking. So, you know, as I mentioned before, possibly the clamp that's down in here, right there, possibly that one needs to go up here. So maybe I need to try shifting those around. But yeah, I mean, the boost leaks are just so persistent on this truck. It's just unbelievable. So also I tried to order some new gaskets. So there's square gaskets that go here, and then in this square is where the grid heaters live, and then the gasket from the bottom of that square to the actual mounting base here. That's kind of an oddball shape, and I tried to order some online. It's only 25 bucks for the gasket kit, but they wanted 65 for shipping, which it's coming out of the States, so I mean, that's a lot, you know. It might have been 45 or 50. Either way, I think it was gonna cost around 100 bucks Canadian, which is just ludicrous, because the next time I pull this thing apart, the gaskets are gonna rip again. So I went and bought this stuff. This is just some gasket paper. I got it at a parts store. Very thick though. Like, you know, compared to the gaskets that came in the last kit, like, this is really thick and beefy. And I actually kind of measured it, and that shape will probably go in a spot about this big. So if I needed to make a bunch of them, I could, but I would imagine this stuff would be kind of reusable. We'll see how that goes. So I'm gonna put some new ones on there. I'm also gonna call the shop that I got the turbo kit from today and find out about that V-band clamp. I'll try swapping those two around and see if that happens. But yeah, I cannot get that thing sealed. I just really don't get it. So anyways, that's kind of where I'm at for now. The truck's running great, but lots of little things to deal with. Next big project coming up is gonna be the Dakota getting painted and some body work done. And then in the meantime, I am having so much fun going out and riding the quad around. So I'm going to be doing that a lot. I actually found a spot yesterday, kind of up in the mountains, where there's a road that I've been on before, but it's got a bunch of snow on it now. So, you know, we're going to head up there and tear around and have some fun. So should be good. Lots of videos coming, and sorry for the boring, long-winded video, but just wanted to make sure everybody knows where things are at. So anyways, thanks for watching. Take care, and see you on the next one.